Friends, did you ever imagine that the oldest and most dangerous player in the hip-hop world, 50 Cent, would drop a bomb that wouldn't just end a career, but would destroy an entire home and a decades-old relationship? The internet is currently on fire because of a recently deleted Instagram post that has ignited a war between Atlanta and New York. A war that has moved beyond a simple rivalry and straight into the bedroom. Imagine this. On one side, T is preparing for the biggest comeback of his career. And on the other, his son King Harris makes the ultimate mistake by bringing 50 cents late. Mother's grave into the mix, an insult for which there is no forgiveness in 50 Cent's dictionary. But the real explosion happened when reports and images suddenly began to go viral, claiming that 50 Cent spent a secret night with T.I.'s wife, Tiny Harris, and the proof is about to go public. Is this just a rumor, or is 50 Cent truly targeted? T.I.'s marriage just to rub salt in his wounds. People are saying that T.I. has turned back and begged 50 Cent, pleading, "Fifth, please stop. Don't drag my family into this." But does 50 Cent ever stop? In today's video, we will discuss all those reports, the truth behind those leaked photos, and the silent terror that has brought T.I. to his knees. Get ready, because today we are lifting the veil that 50 Cent dropped by posting that secret night photo. This beef is no longer just a rap battle. It has become a personal destruction that has left everyone from Jay-Z to Diddy in total shock. Can Tiny and T.I.'s relationship survive this storm? Stay with us, because the story is just beginning. The tension surrounding the Harris family began to reach a boiling point after the internet became obsessed with the leaked images that suggested a history between 50 Cent and Tiny that neither party was willing to confirm or deny. As news of these photographs circulated, the atmosphere inside the Harris household reportedly shifted from defensive defiance to a chilling silence that left those closest to the couple deeply concerned. T.I., who had built his entire persona on the idea of being the king of the South, found himself in a position where his street credibility was being systematically dismantled by a man who had mastered the art of psychological warfare. Fans were shocked as they watched the narrative pivot from a simple music industry beef into a calculated strike against the sanctity of a long-term marriage. For years, T.I. had navigated controversies with the grace of a seasoned veteran. But this situation felt entirely different because it touched on the most intimate aspects of his life. The images that surfaced showed a version of the past that seemed to contradict the public image of a solid family unit. And for the public, this was the ultimate piece of drama. Observers noted that T appeared visibly shaken during his recent public appearances, his trademark confidence replaced by a sense of urgency that hinted at the personal stakes involved. When 50 Cent chose to weaponize these images, he was not just looking for a win in a rap battle. He was aiming to cause irreparable damage to the foundations of the Harris legacy. The reaction from the broader hip-hop community was one of collective jaw-dropping disbelief as the gravity of the accusations became apparent to everyone watching this saga unfold on social media platforms. Industry insiders whispered that the weight of these leaks was putting an immense strain on Tiny, who had always been the bridge between T and the various conflicts he found himself in. With the focus shifting so abruptly to her own personal history, the pressure became nearly unbearable, leading to a silence that only fed the hunger of the tabloids and the gossip columns. Every time the internet refreshed, there were new theories about what happened during those alleged nights in the past, and whether T was aware of the full extent of the interactions between his wife and his greatest rival. The emotional conflict here was palpable as T.I. had to reconcile his public demand for respect with the private reality of his wife being dragged through the mud of public opinion. Friends of the family who spoke anonymously described a home life that had become a pressure cooker where every notification on a phone felt like a potential threat to their already fragile peace. The betrayal felt by T.I. was not just about the rumors of secret history, but about the brazen nature of 50 Cent in flaunting this information to millions of followers, effectively turning the fans into jurors of his private life. The public sentiment was deeply divided, and some feeling that T.I. had invited this level of scrutiny by poking the bear for years, while others believed that crossing the line into marriage and family was a violation of the unspoken codes that used to govern the streets. As the debate raged on, the stakes continued to climb, and it became clear that this was no longer a battle for musical supremacy, but a war of attrition where the victor would be determined by who could endure the most public humiliation. narrative of the perfect family had been replaced by a gritty cinematic tragedy where every move was scrutinized, every silence was analyzed, and every social media post was treated as a hidden message. Tiny, in her own way, had remained the eye of the hurricane, but the sheer volume of negative attention was pushing her to the brink. Those who had followed the family for years through their reality television projects noted a stark difference in their demeanor. The laughter and lighthearted banter had been replaced by a stoic, guarded tension that suggested the rift was running much deeper than anyone dared to admit. The conflict had transcended the bounds of entertainment and entered the territory of real-life trauma, and the impact was evident in the way that local Atlanta radio hosts and club DJs were hesitant to even mention names of the parties involved. The fear of being on the wrong side of this feud was palpable, as everyone understood that 50 Cent played for keeps, and he never left a stone unturned when he had a target in his sights. The situation reached a fever pitch when rumors emerged that T.I. had attempted to reach out to corporate partners and industry titans to mediate the situation, hoping to save his reputation before the damage became permanent. However, those attempts at diplomacy seemed to fall flat against the relentless trolling of 50 Cent, who continued to post and delete content that kept the spotlight firmly on the most uncomfortable parts of the Harris marriage. The emotional drain was becoming visible in T.I. as he struggled to maintain his footing while his wife was being used as a pawn in a game that he felt he was losing control of. The community was left to wonder if the Harris marriage would be the final casualty of this feud, and the whispers of a potential separation began to gain traction in ways that they never had before. The betrayal felt deep, not just because of the rumors, but because of the public visibility of it all, turning a private crisis into an international spectacle that fed on the insecurities and the past. Mistakes of both T.I. and Tiny as they tried to navigate the storm. The lack of a clear, unified response from the Harris camp only served to fuel the fire, giving the internet more room to speculate, invent, and judge. It was a classic case of a high-profile downfall playing out in real time with the cameras of millions of smartphones serving as a witness to the dissolution of a hip-hop power couple. The complexity of the emotions involved was something that transcended the typical celebrity gossip. It was about the survival of an identity that T had cultivated over decades. The humiliation was not just for him, but for everyone who had looked up to the family as a representation of success, resilience, and growth. Every day that passed without a resolution saw the narrative become more twisted, with new photos being dug up from decades past and recontextualized as damning evidence of betrayal that had been hidden in plain sight. The psychological toll of this public airing of dirty laundry was immense, and it changed the way the public viewed the entire dynamic of the family, making them feel vulnerable and exposed in a way that was completely alien to them. As the cycle of accusations continued, the line between truth and fabrication began to blur, and it became increasingly difficult to tell what was genuine hurt and what was simply the byproduct of a calculated smear campaign. T.I. found himself cornered, options dwindling as his attempts to command respect were met with mockery and the constant resurfacing of the very past he wanted to bury. He had long been known as a man who could handle himself in any situation, but facing off against an opponent who had no regard for the boundaries of privacy was a completely different challenge. The family was left divided as some relatives reportedly urged T.I. to take a more aggressive legal stance, while others believed that any further engagement would only give 50 Cent more fuel for his fire. The internal pressure was beginning to manifest in ways that made it impossible to ignore the strain that was radiating outward from their household. As the world watched, the drama unfolded with an intensity that felt like a scripted show. But the pain, the anger, and the frustration were all too real for those living through it. Every interaction in public was now a calculated performance, and every private moment was potentially subject to exposure, creating an environment of perpetual anxiety. The fans were shocked by the sheer callousness of the assault, and they found themselves caught in a tug-of war between their admiration for careers of both men and their repulsion at the methods being used to destroy one another. Destroy one another. The Harris legacy, once defined by its triumphs and its ability to overcome adversity, was now being defined by the singular disastrous conflict that threatened to strip away everything they had built. The days turned into weeks. The intensity of the situation only grew, creating a sense of inevitability that something major was about to break. The fear that this was the end of an era was spreading through the community, and the silence from the Harris household was beginning to feel more like a signal of surrender than a strategy of restraint. Every time a new report surfaced, the public was drawn deeper into the mess, and the fascination with the destruction of a legacy continued to climb. The narrative had become inescapable, and for TIA, the prospect of finding a way out of the trap was becoming less and less likely. As the pressure peaked, the internal dynamics of the family were stretched to their absolute limit, with every disagreement being exacerbated by the external threat. The public perception of the Harris family had shifted irrevocably, and the trust that they had worked so hard to establish with their fans was being tested by the relentless barrage of negativity. The story was now consuming everything in its path, and there was no longer any room for nuance or defense in the face of such a high-profile and high-stakes onslaught that promised only more pain for everyone involved in the unfolding drama. The atmosphere remained heavy with anticipation as the public waited for the next move, knowing that whatever came next would likely change the landscape of hip-hop celebrity culture for years to come. The silence from the Harris camp eventually broke, but not in the way anyone expected. As the situation transitioned from a Cold War of social media posts into a heated series of private confrontations that were leaked to the public through various industry channels, according to reports that began to circulate among the elite circles of Atlanta, T.I. had finally reached his limit and decided to confront the reality of the secret night photos by demanding an explanation that the internet had already provided in its own twisted way. The emotional conflict within the household reached a fever pitch as Tiny was forced to defend her past in the face of 50 Cent's relentless psychological warfare. While T.I. struggled with the feeling of being betrayed on a global stage, the betrayal wasn't just about what may or may not have happened years ago, but about the fact that his rival was now the one holding the keys to his domestic peace. Fans were shocked when a supposed recording of a heated argument between the couple surfaced, where voices were raised and the weight of the accusations seemed to be tearing the very fabric of their marriage apart. Tiny reportedly argued that 50 Cent was merely using old out-of-context moments to ruin their present happiness. But the seed of doubt had already been planted deep within the mind of the King of the South. As these internal battles raged, 50 Cent did not let up for a single second. Instead, choosing to post even more cryptic messages that hinted at a long-term deception that went far beyond a single night. The narrative shifted once again when close associates of 50 Cent began to claim that the mogul had even more damaging evidence, including video footage that would make the previous photos look like child's play. The personal stakes were at an all-time high because Tia was not just fighting for his name, but for the future of his children who were now seeing their parents. Most private and painful moments trending every hour. King Harris, whose initial outburst had triggered this avalanche, was reportedly sidelined by his father as the family tried to enter damage control mode. But the young rapper's guilt was palpable as he realized his words had given 50 Cent the excuse he needed to go nuclear. The reactions of their friends in the industry were equally dramatic, with many choosing to remain silent for fear of 50 Cent's wrath, effectively leaving the Harris family on an island of their own making. Even as T tried to project an image of a man in control, his social media activity became erratic, alternating between biblical quotes about strength and sudden deletions of his own posts, which fans interpreted as a clear sign of a mental and emotional breakdown. The twists continued to pile up when a former bodyguard for the Gannett mogul came forward on a popular podcast, claiming he had personally witnessed the interactions between Tiny and 50 Cent during the height of their respective fame in the mid-200s. This testimony added a layer of realism to the story that made it even harder for the Harris camp to dismiss everything as mere trolling or fake news. The family was left divided as some members began to question why Tiny had ever been in those circles to begin with, leading to a rift between her and T.I.'s extended family that played out in subtle but stinging Instagram comments and unfollows. The atmosphere in Atlanta was thick with the scent of a falling empire, and every move T.I. made was viewed through the lens of a man who is desperately trying to stop a sinking ship with his bare hands. 50 Cent, sensing the vulnerability, began to pivot his attacks toward the financial stability of the Harris empire, mocking their business ventures and suggesting that the stress of the secret night scandal was already causing their professional partnerships to crumble. The narrative had now become a dark reflection of the reality TV shows they had once starred in. But this time there were no scriptwriters to ensure a happy ending, and no editors to cut out the moments of raw. Unadulterated pain emotions ran. Highest Tiny allegedly moved out of the primary residence for a few days to get space, a move that the paparazzi caught and immediately broadcast to a hungry audience. The sight of her luggage being loaded into a car was the visual proof the world needed to believe that the marriage was truly on the brink of collapse. T.I.'s response was a desperate video where he spoke about the sanctity of black love and the traps of the enemy. But the comment section was flooded with laughing emojis and memes of 50 Cent's frog, proving that the public had already chosen their side in this war of perception. The twist grew even darker when rumors surfaced that 50 Cent had reached out to T.I.'s exes to gather more dirt, creating a multi-front war that no one man could realistically win. The psychological toll was becoming a physical one, as T appeared thinner and more exhausted in the rare photos that surfaced of him leaving his office late at night. He was a man obsessed with a ghost from the past, trying to fight an opponent who wasn't even in the room with him, but was instead living, rent-free in his head through a smartphone screen. The industry was left questioning the ethics of such an attack. But 50 Cent's fans argued that in the world of hip-hop, everything was fair game if you started the fight first. The Harris family struggle became a cautionary tale about the dangers of internet beef and how easily the lines between performance and reality can be erased. As the second wave of leaks hit, focusing on alleged text exchanges from years prior, the credibility of the Harris marriage was under such heavy fire that even their most loyal supporters began to waver. The betrayal felt by the fans was almost as significant as the betrayal felt within the family, as the image of the perfect unbreakable couple was replaced by one of secrets, lies, and long-standing resentments. Every time T. Doy tried to stand up and reclaim his throne, 50 Cent was there to trip him with another piece of the past, making it clear that the only way this would end was with T.I.'s total and complete surrender. The emotional conflicts had now extended to the business world, where investors were reportedly pulling out of T.I.'s upcoming projects. Fearing that the scandal would permanently stain anything associated with his brand, the Harris legacy was being stripped away layer by layer, leaving behind a raw and exposed core that no amount of flashy videos or eloquent interviews could cover up. The twists were no longer just about the secret night, but about the systematic destruction of a man's entire life's work. And the public was watching with a mixture of horror and fascination. The drama had reached a point where even Jay-Z was rumored to have called T to tell him to lay low and let the storm pass. But T.I.'s pride wouldn't allow him to stay silent while his wife's name was being dragged. This defiance only played further into 50 Cent's hands as he lured T into deeper and more embarrassing public exchanges that further eroded his dignity. The family was now a house divided against itself. With the children caught in the middle of a war they didn't understand, and the parents unable to provide the protection they so desperately needed. The cycle of pain and public humiliation seemed endless, and as the narrative moved toward its next phase, the question was no longer if the marriage would survive, but if there would be anything left of T.I.'s career once the dust finally settled on this catastrophic series of events. The world waited with bated breath as the clock ticked down to what many believed would be the final, most devastating leak of them all, one that promised to end the conversation once and for all, and leave only the ruins of a once great dynasty. In its wake, the climax of this legendary feud arrived when 50 Cent dropped what many consider to be the ultimate psychological bomb, which was a series of dated receipts and location tags that supposedly placed him and Tiny in the same luxury hotel on a night that T was out of the country on tour. The impact of this revelation was like a physical blow to the Harris family, and it sent Ty into a state of public mourning for his own reputation, as he realized that the King of the South had been outplayed in his own backyard. Reports surfaced that a private meeting was called between the couple and their legal teams, because the threat of a high-profile divorce was no longer just a rumor, but a looming reality that threatened to split their massive fortune and their complicated business interests. The betrayal felt by T.I. was now compounded by the public nature of his downfall, as every gossip blog and news outlet began to run retrospective pieces on the timeline of their relationship, trying to find every crack where 50 Cent might have slipped in. Fans were shocked to see T.I. post a series of videos where he appeared to be in a state of total despair, his voice cracking as he spoke about the difficulty of maintaining a legacy when the world is rooting for your destruction. Emotions ran. Highest Tiny finally broke her silence with a cryptic post that many interpreted as an apology to her husband. but a defiant middle finger to 50 Cent, suggesting that whatever happened in the past should have stayed there. However, the family was left divided as King Harris reportedly moved out of the family home, unable to deal with the guilt of being the catalyst for his mother's public shaming and his father's emotional collapse. The personal stakes had grown so large that even this seemed irrelevant as T.I. announced he was putting his final album on hold indefinitely because he could not find the heart to record bars while his home was on fire. 50 Cent, in a rare moment of chilling calm, posted a final image of a white flag with the caption that he had told him not to mess with him and that he was now finished with the Harris family because there was nothing left to destroy. The industry was left in a state of shock as they witnessed the total surrender of a man who was once considered untouchable, and the drama had reached its natural and tragic conclusion. Friends of the couple began to speak about a slow process of healing that would take.